Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. We'll continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's On Disciplining the Soul, Kitab Riyadat al-Nafs, translated by Timothy Winter, Abdul Hakim Murad. We have reached an exposition detailing the method used in refining the character. بيان وتفصيل الطريق إلى تهذيب الأخلاق. We are on page 39 of the translation. Imam Ghazali rahimahullah said, "You have learned from the foregoing that an equilibrium of the traits of character, equilibrium, that's الاعتدال في الأخلاق, causes the soul to be healthy, while any deviation from this equilibrium constitutes a sickness and a disorder within it. Just as an equilibrium of the humors of the body, mizaj, because usually the word humor or humors, it is a translation of al-akhlaq, but in this case it's al-mizaj, مزاج البدن. Just as an equilibrium of the humors of the body leads to its health, and an imbalance entails a sickness. Let us therefore take the human body as our metaphor and proceed with our discourse as follows. The soul, in being divested of ugly traits and qualities, and given virtuous and beautiful ones, is like a body, which may be cured through the removal of diseases and the restoration of health. Just as the basic constitution is usually in equilibrium, which a transforming disorder affects through the effects of food, air, and other circumstances. So also every child is born in equilibrium and with a sound innate disposition. It is only his parents, her parents, who make of him a Jew, a Christian, or a Zoroastrian. This is the hadith of يولد المولود على الفطرة فأبواه يهودانه أو ينصرانه أو يمجسانه. This is the so the social context does change this innate state disposition. Imam Al-Ghazali practically effectively begins the المنقذ من الضلال with this hadith, the deliverance from error. Which means that all human beings are born with this natural disposition, and this is why when somebody adopts Islam, becomes a Muslim, he or she is described as a revert, because they return to that original state, to a state in the state of fitra, the natural disposition. So the parents make the child a Jew, a Christian, Zoroastrian. That is, it is through familiarity and education that ugly customs are acquired. And just as the body is not initially created complete, but rather moves towards completion and strength through its growth, of course, this is provided by nourishment, etc., and upbringing, so too, the soul is created deficient, with its completion and perfection being present in a latent form, and will only become perfected through training. Here, he uses the word tarbiyah, وتهذيب الأخلاق والتغذية بالعلم. Earlier, when he spoke about the badan, the body, he used the word tarbiyah. Nushu is with growth, with tarbiyah. التربية is also nurturing. So let's so after the hadith of the though it's not mentioned here as a hadith, but it is المولود على الفطرة. That is, it is through familiarity and education that ugly customs are acquired, and just as the body is not initially created complete, but rather moves towards completion and strength through its growth and upbringing through النشوء. Now, I think there is need to highlight. Uh, it is not التربية is not upbringing, okay? Because think about it this way. فرعون reminded Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, Prophet Moses, of his favors. ألم نربك فينا وليدا. نربك from تربية. This is a major change in the in Arab Islamic culture, because the education, if you talk about tarbiyah and education, originally we talk about adab, not tarbiyah, and rather than al-murabbi, it is the al-mu'addab. That's what was. So it was more about inculcating the good traits in the character. That's the mu'addab. Mu'allim, but not murabbi. The murabbi is a new thing. The and we do use tarbiyah really in tarbiyat dawajin, raising uh, poultry, tarbiyat mawashi, cattle. Uh, so the tarbiyah is about measurable growth. It's not really as we understand as it is used today. So definitely Imam Ghazali is not using it for tarbiyah as education, because he said وَالتَّرْبِيَةِ بِالْغِذَاء, using nourishment. Okay, tarbiyah بالغذاء. And when he says that the nafs has two aspects for its complete, that attaining completion. One part is tarbiyah, and one part is تهذيب الأخلاق والتغذية بالعلم. So too the soul is created deficient, with its completion and perfection being present in a latent form, and will only become perfected through training. Again, tarbiyah وتهذيب الأخلاق, yes. والتغذية بالعلم. So we talk about a different now type of nourishment. Originally, بالغذاء, originally for the badan, definitely we talk about food. The refinement of the character and being nourished with knowledge. Food for the heart, if you will. قوت القلوب, like the title of the book of Abi Talib al-Makki. Just as when the body is healthy, the physician should establish the canon which will maintain his health, and when it is ill, he should restore it to health. Similarly, when your soul is pure, clean, and of good character, you should strive to keep it in this way and strengthen and purify it yet further. And when it is not, you should struggle to make it so. And just as disorder which changes the body's equilibrium and brings about its sickness may only be treated through its opposite. If it proceeds from heat, then through something cooling and vice versa, in brackets, in parentheses rather. Similarly, the ugliness, which is the heart sickness, can only be treated with its own opposite, so that the disease of ignorance is treated by education. When I mentioned the story of the Pharaoh mentioning his favors towards Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, أَلَمْ نُرَبِّكَ فِينَا وَإِذَا, he fed him. That's what I meant by this example. He fed him, roof above his head. Definitely, he was uh, pampered in a sense on the material level, including nourishment. But the Pharaoh was could not be a source of adab for Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. That's why Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam needed to go through that, uh, let's call it intensive course for 8 or 10 years in Madian, uh, shepherding, so that his character would لتصنع على عيني. He was being his character was being reformed in a sense in preparation. On his way back, he was told that he was chosen as a prophet. The burning bush story. So that disease of ignorance is treated by education, that of avarice by giving money away, that of pride by self-effacement, and that of greed by forcibly restraining oneself from the things one craves. The curing of a sick body requires that one endure the bitter taste of the medicine and persevere in renouncing certain things one desires. And in like fashion, in the treatment of the heart's sickness, one must endure the bitterness of struggle and steadfastness. This is even more the case in truth, since one can escape the bodily illness through death, whereas the sickness of the heart, uh, we seek refuge with God from that, is a sickness which abides even after death and for all eternity. A cooling medicine will not be sufficient to effect the cure of a disorder caused by heat unless it be administered in a certain measure, which will vary according to the severity of or mildness of the complaint and the length of time for which it has been present. It is essential that there be a standard measure for this by which the efficient amount to be given may be known, since if the wrong quantity is administered, the disorder will be exacerbated. The opposites with which the traits of character are treated must also be provided with a standard measure, just as the quantity of medicine used is taken in accordance with the sickness, so that the physician will not give any treatment until he knows whether the disease is caused by heat or cold and has a certain the degree to which the temperature is high or low, and will only then tend to the conditions of the body and the weather, the profession, the age and other circumstances of the patient. And it will then, in accordance with all this, begin his treatment. So also the guiding sheikh, who is the physician of his aspirants, spiritual, of the aspirant souls, and the treater of the hearts of those who wish for guidance, should not impose any specific duties and forms of self discipline upon them until he has learned about their character and ascertained the diseases from which they suffer. Were a physician to treat all of his patients with a single medicine, he would kill most of them. And so it is with the Shaykh, who were he to charge all his aspirants with one kind of exercise would destroy them and kill their hearts. Rather, attention should be paid to the illness of each aspirant, his circumstances, his age, his constitution, and the capacity of his body to perform such exercises, which should be prescribed on this basis. If the aspirant is a beginner and is ignorant of the provisions of the law, he should first be taught about ritual purity and prayer and the external acts of worship. If he is occupied in gaining money from forbidden sources or is regularly perpetrating some wrongdoing, he should be asked first to forsake this. And when he is made outwardly beautiful through acts of worship, and his members, uh, you talk about the members of the organs, the sometimes the jawarih, and his members have been purified from external transgressions, the Shaykh should look through the evidence provided by his states to what lies within him in order to ascertain his character and the disease of his heart. At this point, should he perceive that he has wealth in excess of his needs, he should take it from him and give it in charity in order to empty his heart of it and to prevent him from being distracted. Should he perceive that frivolity, pride, and self esteem have taken hold of him, he should instruct him to go to the marketplace and beg, since self esteem and love of authority can only be broken by humiliation, of which begging is the most intense form. He will require him to persist in this for a period until the pride and self esteem are destroyed, for pride and also frivolity are among the illnesses which lead to destruction. Rather than begging, and I think Imam Ghazali elsewhere mentions cleaning the bathrooms, for example, whether it's at the at a school, at a Sufi lodge, at a zawiya, at a mosque, etc. That would be appropriate, inshallah. Should the Sheikh see that the body and dress of the aspirant are usually clean? This is exactly here is what Imam Ghazali, uh, what I have just said. And that his heart inclines to this and is pleased with it, he will give him a job as a latrine attendant and cleaner, and instruct him to sweep filthy places and to remain in the kitchen and places where there is smoke until the attachment he has to cleanliness departs. For someone who cleans and adorns his clothes and makes requests for clean, patched garments, the muraqqa'ah, and colored prayer carpets is no different from a bride who spends the entire day decorating herself. There is no difference at all between a man who worships himself and one who worships an idol, inasmuch as one worships anything other than God, one is veiled from him. Therefore, anyone who pays attention to anything in his dress, apart from its being from a legitimate source and ritually pure, in a way that turns his heart towards it, is occupied with his own self. There is a companion of the Prophet ﷺ who asked the Prophet, because when the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith, لا يدخل الجنة من كان في قلبه مثقال ذرة من كبر فقال رجل: إن الرجل يحب أن يكون ثوبه حسنا ونعله حسنا. فقال: إن الله جميل يحب الجمال. This is a sound tradition narrated by Imam Muslim. So the hadith إن الله جميل يحب الجمال include that phrase or that question of the companion. So the Prophet ﷺ approved that the dress would be nice and that the shoes would be nice. Talk about and how is it going to be nice if it's not clean? Maybe if we talk about being obsessed uh, with certain level of cleanliness, that he finds it hard to eat, like everybody else, to sleep in harsh conditions, let's say, compared to what he is used. But the idea of cleanliness, let's say that one might contextualize this, but let's bring such a hadith um, to the foreground when we deal with this particular issue. It is one of the subtlest aspects of discipline that if an aspirant murid does not permit himself to renounce frivolity or some other trait at all, and will not allow himself its opposite all at once, he should move from one blameworthy trait of character to another which is less harmful, in the manner of a man who washes off blood with urine, and then rinses off the urine with water if water would not have removed the blood, and like a schoolboy who loves to play with balls and sticks and such like things, and then is progressively drawn from such play by being encouraged to improve his appearance and to wear fine clothes, and then from this by being encouraged to seek influence and authority. Power dress, as we call it today, and then by being encouraged to long for the afterlife. The case of the man whose soul does not permit him to abandon his illusion at all at once is similar. Let him move on to a lesser form of this vice, and so it is with the remaining traits. Should the sheikh see that the aspirant is usually under the influence of greed for food, he should oblige him to fast and to reduce the amount he eats. Next, he should instruct him to prepare delicious meals and serve them to others without tasting them himself, until his soul becomes stronger and he becomes used to forbearance, whereupon his greed will have been subjugated. So his greed will be, whereupon his greed will have been subjugated. And should he see that the aspirant is a young man longing to be married, but cannot afford to do so, he should instruct him to fast. Should this not do away with his sexual desire, he should tell him to break his fast with water and no bread, or vice versa, on alternate evenings, and forbid him to eat meat or any other thing with his bread until his soul is reduced to submission and his sexual desire broken. For at the beginning of aspirancy, there is no cure more effective than hunger. Well, this originally the first part about asking the young man to who longs to be married, asking to fast. Uh, لحديث the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم: يا معشر الشباب من استطاع منكم الباءة فليتزوج فإن لم يستطع فعليه بالصوم فإنه له وجاء. So the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم addressed the youngsters, the young men, he who could afford to get married, uh, the marriage expenses, then uh, he he's invited to get married. The young man who can afford marriage, the responsibilities, financial responsibilities, and otherwise. And those who cannot afford it, فإن لم يستطع فعليه بالصوم. He should fast, for that's really where that's protection really. If he sees that he is a predominantly irascible uh, disposition, should oblige him. He should oblige him always to be gentle and quiet, and should make him serve and keep the company of an ill-mannered man in order that he might train his soul to tolerate him. One of the Sufis habitually habituated his soul to mildness and freed himself from excessive anger by hiring a man to insult him in public. He forced himself to be forbearing and to suppress his anger, continuing this way until his nature became characterized by a proverbial gentleness. I'm not sure whether this is uh, that this falls within the Islamic worldview, within the parameters of the law to hire someone to insult you in public. For one can still uh, train himself to suppress his anger والكاظم الغيظ والعافية عن الناس والله يحب المحسنين. The other example, another of them felt the presence of cowardice and faint-heartedness in his soul, and wishing to acquire the trait of bravery made in his practice to put to sea in the winter time when the swell was at its roughest. The ascetics of India treat laziness, so venturing into the water to swim or just simply maybe also to ride a boat or this is يركب البحر, so venturing in a boat or whatever when it is rough seas. This way he will get rid of cowardice. The ascetics of India treat laziness in worship by standing up all night on pillars. And one of the sheikhs at the outset of his own aspirancy, finding that his soul was lazy during the night devotions, the Qiyam al-Layl, for this reason forced himself to stand on his head all night so that his soul would willingly accept standing on his feet. Another treated his love of wealth and selling all that he owned and throwing the proceeds into the sea, fearing that if he gave it to other people he would be afflicted by self-satisfaction and a desire to be seen doing this. Now again, uh, definitely he should basically give it to the he can still manage to give it to the poor without them knowing who gave them. I know of a case um, where a mosque was being built and someone threw the money in an envelope, of course indicating that it is for the building the mosque, from the through the window, one of the windows of the Imam's house, who was overseeing the building the mosque. So, so Allah Subhanahu wa Taala knows best who was this person, who would not even allow one person to know who gave this money as a sadaqah. So there are good ways of training oneself to get rid of bad traits, bad character. These examples should teach you the way to treat hearts. It is not our intention to mention the medicine for each sickness, for this will be done in the remaining books of the Ihya, of course, of the Revival of Islamic Sciences. Rather, what we intend to do here is to draw the reader's attention to the fact that the general technique consists in doing the opposite of everything that the soul inclines to and craves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has summed up all of these things in His statement in the Quran, and whoever fears the standing before his Lord and forbids his soul its whim, for him heaven shall be the place of resort. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى. The very last paragraph of this topic. The important principle in the spiritual struggle is to carry out what one has determined upon. If one determines to renounce a desire, then the means to pursue it will be made easier. This is a trial and a test from God, and one should therefore have fortitude and perseverance. If one habituates oneself to violating one's own resolution, the soul will come to take pleasure in this and will be corrupted. Should it happen that a man does violate his resolution, he should compel his soul to accept a punishment for this. As we have already mentioned in the section, the chastisement of the soul in the book of self examination and vigilance. If he does not intimidate it through the presence of a punishment, it will defeat him and make the following of desire seem good, and this will corrupt his self discipline entirely. This is Kitab al-Muhasaba wal-Muraqabah. So next inshallah will be بيان علامات أمراض القلوب وعلامات عودها إلى الصحة. An exposition of the symptoms by which the diseases of the heart may be recognized and the signs which indicate a return to health. So this will be inshallah the topic of the next session. Until then, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.